Right, and I'm sure you have seen the front pages this morning. Almost all the newspapers talking about very exciting stories. This morning, we took a deeper look at some of the stories, but the headlines, 3 policemen arrested in illegal arms deal with robbers. That's a story. NDC reviews, you need to walk. The Statesman has a story. Daily Guide says, Dopuni assets frozen again. Again, yes, it's not a question. The Independent says Ministry of Health signs MOU to deploy drone technology for efficient health delivery. Indum supports 8 students with 80,000 to start business. That's 80,000 cities. That story from the Public Accounts Committee gets some space on the Today newspaper. Gomwa East blows 81,000 K on DC's funeral. Those are the stories on some of the papers I have. My guest this morning from the University of Education, Winneba, Dr. Ahmed Jinapor is here. Good morning.
Good morning, Ray.
Hope you're doing great.
Not bad.
So we're getting ready to come to Simpa for Abuachi.
Abuachi. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Interestingly, I've never witnessed it.
Oh, no, this year we'll make sure you are there. All right. And then the Member of Parliament for the Tamale North constituency is a member of the NDC. Honorable Alhaji Suyin is here. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hope you're good. How was the U.S. protest in Tamale?
Oh, it was massive. It was beyond expectation, and I want to commend the organizers, Put Ghana First movement. I think they are doing a great job. They had a very successful lecture at the University of Ghana, Legon, that came after the demonstration in Accra. And this, I think, is their 3rd activity in Tamale, and it was massive. I also wish to commend the people of Tamale for, their show of solidarity and their patriotism, because this is about the sovereignty of Ghana, and their show of patriotism towards the need for us to safeguard our sovereignty, and to indicate to parties involved in this agreement that as a people we do not think this is going to serve us well.
I'm grateful. We'll find time to talk about it. I'm expecting a technical advisor at the office of the Vice President, Dr. Gideon Boakon, to join us. He's not yet in. Sure, he will be with us very soon. Let's start this morning's conversation. The Daily Graphic has that big story. The decision for banks to recapitalize, the central bank says it's irreversible. That's what it says. The Independent puts the story as the culture of leniency that once prevailed will not be countenanced. That's the Bank of Ghana. And it says that the culture of regulatory leniency that once prevailed in the banking sector will not be countenanced going forward. That's the Bank of Ghana talking there. Now, Second Deputy Governor, Madam Elsie Awaji, said the bank's statutory mandate, which includes the responsibility to promote the stability of the financial system and to protect the interest of depositors, is a responsibility the management of the Bank of Ghana takes very, very seriously. And so the bank said that the date is fixed, the amount is fixed, there's no going back. At that meeting, a breakfast meeting, some stakeholders also raised concerns. They talked about the fact that they are looking at lumping the banks together and saying that, hey, bring X amount. That's their concern. The story is captured in the Daily Graphic and the Independent. Let me start the conversation. Dr. Jinapor, now, the Bank of Ghana says that my doors are completely shut despite concerns. Can we still ask the Bank of Ghana to at least leave the door half open?
Well, let me say good morning to your cherished viewers. I think, as you said, the Bank of Ghana has a responsibility to ensure that there's efficiency when it comes to the management of our banks. And I'm tempted to believe that they thought through this whole policy very well before they arrived at this decision. And thinking through it means that they looked at the various options and they had technical advice. But for me, as an ordinary person, when you see a story of this sort on the front page of the Daily Graphic, it tells you that there are still some concerns relative to the ability of these banks to be able to raise that money. Because if there was no problem, I don't think people will still be asking the Bank of Ghana to reconsider that decision. That said, if the Bank of Ghana stands by what it's saying is going to do, then it means that we must brace ourselves with the ramification of such a policy in terms of if banks are not able to meet the requirement, what happens? It means they have to fold up. And if they fold up, what happens? It means people will have to lose their jobs. So I'm looking at it not just from the perspective of what needs to be done in terms of meeting the requirements, in terms of bringing efficiency, but you also have to look at the social aspect of it. Social aspect in terms of as it stands today. There is evidence to the fact that there are a lot of money moving from banks because of what happened relative to the other banks that folded up. People are moving their monies from one bank to the other. There's even scientific research to the fact that people are not even investing in capital investments because you can't trust the system. And how many banks will be able to meet this particular requirement that is being put across? So I think moving forward from now till December is still some time. I wouldn't support the stance of the Bank of Ghana that it is not open to any kind of negotiation or any kind of I don't think entrenched positions is the way to go. If there's any way that this issue can be addressed and settled in a manner that you have a win-win situation, in the sense that you don't want a situation whereby most of these indigenous banks are going to fold up. In fact, how many banks are we looking at? How many of them, in terms of statistics, are able to meet the requirement, and how many are not? So let's wait and see how things shape out. And I hope and pray that at the end of the day, the overriding objective should be efficiency. Efficiency in the banking system, and not just efficiency, but there also needs to be confidence. And not just confidence, but I think the ordinary Ghanaian should be in a position to say that, look, I'm confident not to keep my money home, but to take it to the bank. And mind you, I think even things have improved now, but...
and that's what the Bank of Ghana said, and that's the only way to ensure that confidence. Get these banks to cough out that 400 million cedis by the end of the year.
No, I agree. They are looking at efficiency in terms of what their mandate is. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that when you have concerns being raised by some of these banks, it means that most of these banks are not in a position to raise that money. And if they are not in a position to raise that money, it means they are going to fold up. And if they fold up, what is going to be the consequence? The consequence is that it's going to affect the job market in terms of employment. And if there's anything that can be done, I'm not saying anything untoward, but we need to look at it not only from the technical perspective, but also from the social point of view.
I'm grateful, Dr. Jinapor. Quickly, let me introduce my third guest. I earlier had said that he is a technical advisor at the Office of the Vice President. He's a spokesperson. He speaks for the Vice President. Dr. Gideon Boakun just joined us. Good morning.
Welcome.
I hope the Vice President is good.
It's doing well.
Thanks for joining us. But I have to quickly come to you. Dr. Jinapor has just spoken about the Bank of Ghana's decision not to reverse some measures they think will go a long way to protect our banks. The bank said the 400 million cedi recapitalization is non-negotiable. The date is the end of the year, and either you cough out that money or you find your way out. But the banks are raising concerns. For instance, some have suggested, the Royal Bank is saying that there are certain banks that go into small and medium enterprises segment of the economy. They won't need that huge capital for anything. Should the Bank of Ghana still insist that we are not open to negotiation?
Thank you very much, Bright. Let me say good morning to our cherished viewers. Obviously, a straitjacket approach to this situation may not help. And so, like you said, Royal Bank is proposing, there ought to be some kind of categorization and segmentation of the banking industry in Ghana, because different banks, per their structure and size, and then their mandate and also focus, have certain areas that they specify in. And some are interested in small, medium scale enterprises, while some want to do big ticket transactions. And so a minimum capitalization for all banks, one minimum capitalization for all banks, may affect some of the lower banks. They may not have the capacity to be able to do so. And so that thinking is something in order which can be considered. But generally speaking, I've listened to arguments and discussions on this whole Bank of Ghana recapitalization issue. And if you ask me, per my background, I would say that the number of banks we have in Ghana are too many for the population that we have. And so there should be some attempts and some measures to make sure that we whittle down the numbers from where it is now to a certain minimum number of banks. You don't need so many banks as a country to be able to run efficiently and support businesses. What is also critical in this point is not the plethora or the number of banks that we have in the country, but their ability to support big ticket transactions. It's quite important. And I think that is what informed the Bank of Ghana to raise the minimum capital level. Now, as we speak now, if a bank, a commercial bank, is unable to raise, let's say, 400 million Ghana cedis as the minimum capital that the bank can have, it means that the bank will not be able to do big ticket transactions. And today, the young guys who are coming and want to do business, they are not just going to the bank to ask for 10 million cedis or 5 million cedis. They are doing big stuff, which require huge sums of money. And so it means that the bank will not be able to spread their arms widely to a number of businesses that want to grow. And so there should be some attempt for the banks. For me, I think that there should be a conscious attempt for most of these banks to see the need in measure, to merge, make sure that their base is quite big and they can support big ticket transactions. Countries have done it. Nigeria, for instance, had to reduce the number of banks they had from 89 to 25. Okay, and that is how come Nigeria has been able to build strong and robust banks that are financially sound, to the extent that they are creeping into other countries and dominating. If you come to Ghana, for instance, today, most of the banks we have, which are very vibrant, come from Nigeria. How did they do that? They had to reduce the number of banks they had from 89 to 25. And that is what they did. If you look at Malaysia, the minimum capital requirement for commercial banks in Malaysia was $70 million. Jump, just one straight increase. They increased it from $70 million to $549 million. And in the process, Malaysia reduced the number of commercial banks they had from 80 to 12. And that is how come today GID of Malaysia is even thinking of, acquiring certain banks in this country. So it is not the number of banks that we have. Look at the GDP of Canada. Canada has only 6 major banks as a country. Okay, Canada is bigger. The GDP, the economy is in size, is bigger than ours, but they have only 6 major banks. Okay, so we don't need so many banks as a country to run. We need fewer banks that are efficient, robust, and have adequate capital to support big ticket transactions. Today, we have so many banks in Ghana, but you can go to the bank today and say you need $40 million, $80 million to run a business. It may have to take a syndicate for you to get that. It means individual banks are unable to support such big ticket transactions. And also because of the single obligor limit, even if a bank has a capacity, it cannot lend more than 10% of its capital to one person. You understand? And so if the base is not large, the single obligor limit also limits the number of individuals who can access huge capitals from banks in this country. So there ought to be some kind of consolidation, some kind of measure to make sure that 1, 2, 3 banks come together, merge, they put all their resources together we build, and they have a stronger base, and people can then have access to that.
And who has to trigger this? I mean, we've been talking about these measures and for quite some time. Who has to trigger this for these banks to come together?
No, you see, when central bank instigates policies, they may not necessarily come to you as the bank to say that this policy we are doing, we want to force you into measure.
Right.
But latently, the idea is built in there that you, the bank, if they have raised the minimum capital to say 400 million and you cannot get it, you quickly have to talk to a sister bank that cannot also make it. A plus 1 plus 1, you put it together and you make 2, and you are able to make it. The other effect of this is that if the banks are unable to meet the minimum capital, and Bank of Ghana even says that we have waived it for you, and I have been told that the commercial banks which are unable to meet the minimum capital are asking for 4 years extension. For me, that is a lazy approach to the whole thing. If you cannot meet the minimum capital now, okay, you must ask, and even if you are asking for some time, it shouldn't be 4 years. If you ask for 4 years, then you are blatantly telling the Bank of Ghana that you cannot do it and you won't do it. There are options and avenues for the banks to explore, and one of such options is to explore the possibility of mergers, merge with other banks. And when that option has been explored, those who cannot even make it upon merger, then we can look at categorizing the banks, category A, category B. Or these banks, we want you to meet the minimum capital because for you, we want you to do bigger transactions. Or this category of banks cannot do such big ticket transactions. So if today Honorable Suhini is going to bank to deposit money, he knows that as for category B banks, when I take my money there and I want to do business with them, there's a limit of investment I can do with them. Okay. And there's how much I can also expect from them in terms of loans and all of that. Okay. And then we can have that understand. The other thing is that...
Wrap up for me.
Yes, if the banks are unable to do that, and the foreign banks are able to meet the minimum capital requirement, it means that in the long run, the local banks will be collapsing. In the sense that
the accusations the government is always favoring.
No, government would never do that. In the sense that if today I have a certain idea that certain banks are unable to raise money to meet the minimum capital requirements, but others are able to do it. If I have money, I'll do business with those who are able to do that. And so in the long run, you can see that, I mean, investors are rational. Okay, we all have rational expectations, and so if I'm going to the bank to do business, I want to do business with the one
bank that certainly
is
in good
so they should not position themselves to be seen, to be unable to do a simple act of, you know, raising the minimum capital. If you cannot do it on your own, 6 synergies. Try to link up with others and merge, and then you move on. That is what countries that have developed, that is the path they have taken. You can have a developed country with over 50, 100 banks that are running as a developed country.
I'm grateful. I like to see it. The decision, which way do we go? The Bank of Ghana says the doors are shut.
Well, let me say good morning once again to you and to our viewers, and good morning to my colleagues on the panel. Nice to be with you. I think that I want to take it off from where Doc left off. The fact that you have the opportunity to classify the banks, yet your mind is close to that. Classify them in such a way that, yes, okay, like he has suggested, in such a way that you will have the banks that will deal with the big ticket items and the banks that can ordinarily support SMEs. Yet you have a very close mind as far as the approach to resolving a problem that may indeed be there, and with such intentions considered noble. Why is the solution not thought of outside the box, but within a one-size-fits-all framework? I mean, yes, we all know that our banking sector has been challenged over the period. That is why, for example, in 2009, the capital, I mean, there was some recapitalization that took place from about, I think, 60 million to 120. No, it was even lower than that, to 60 million Ghana cedis. And then in 2012, there was another recapitalization from 60 million Ghana cedis to 120 million Ghana cedis. The question you ask yourself is, have these two recapitalizations resolved the problem that we are seeking to resolve with this straight jacket solution? So if we have recapitalized on 2 occasions and the problem still exists, then perhaps I will say that it is time that we begin to think of another solution and not using a blanket solution that says recapitalize to 60 million Ghana cedis, recapitalize to 120 million Ghana cedis, and then you have this third proposal that says recapitalize by the end of year to 400. What is the guarantee that 2009 2012, that's like 3 years, so 2012 2018, that's like another 6 years. What is the guarantee that in 4 or 5 years time we will not be asking the banks to recapitalize again? Because yes, the problem, the intention to solve the problem is noble, but if we have tried it on 2 occasions and the problem persists, then perhaps it's time we begin to look at other ways of resolving the problem. And to say that we have too many banks in this country, I disagree. I think that we just have too many banks concentrated in cities. We do not have too many banks in this country. A larger portion of our population remain unbanked. And that is a fact known to all. So for me, if you ask me, the question will be whether we need more banks to get more people banked, or we need less banks to get more people banked. There is no answer to that. There's no guarantee that the more banks you have, the more people you will have banking with the formal banking sector. There's no research that also shows that the less number of banks you have, the more people you will have, formally banking. But that is the major problem that we have in this country. Because we don't have many people banking, we tend to have these banks also not, raising the needed capital that they require. And people also taking facilities that could have even improved their businesses.
Do you think the banks are not too many?
We just have too many banks concentrated in about 3-4 cities. We don't have enough banks in the country. Do you get it? Yes, so
just a suggestion. What he's saying is a fact.
That they are concentrated in the cities.
The fact that you have so many banks may not necessarily translate into banking of the unbanked. Right. And that's why these days the focus has been other measures towards financial inclusion than just the banking. In the past, we used to think that financial inclusion can only happen through the banking system.
Right.
But these days there are other avenues to get people included into the financial system.
A very important issue has been raised also by some of the operators in the industry, to the effect that not all of them want to do big ticket items. So why compel them to raise capital they will not require? Because if they don't want to do big ticket items, it means they will not need that amount of money you want them to raise as their capital. So you are giving them a burden they otherwise will not want to carry. So what I don't like about this whole discussion or approach of government is the good cop, bad cop kind of attitude to the sector. You have a situation where the finance minister was the first person appointed by the president to announce that there will be this, directive from the Bank of Ghana. Now, the Bank of Ghana is supposed to be an independent regulator. After the finance minister's announcement, the Bank of Ghana actually follows up with a directive and insists that it is going to be at the end of the month. The end of the year. Then you have the presidency who is being petitioned, and the president pretends to want to resolve the problem and sets up a committee, but says that the work of the committee is independent of the directive of the Bank of Ghana. Why are you playing hanky-panky with these, respected, owners of very big investments in this country? The president either wants.
I see you're trying to.
The president either wants all the banks through his finance minister as announced, and also followed through by the Bank of Ghana to recapitalize as indicated, or he doesn't. He should not, in one breath, say that as president he cannot intervene. Yet he sets up a committee that I'm sure will be financed by the taxpayers' money to sit. When he, together with his finance minister, working with the Bank of Ghana, seem to have already made up their mind.
The Bank of Ghana
that
says
nothing is going to influence the decision.
The Bank of Ghana says that committee's work is only to explore ways to help indigenous banks, but not to work on the directive.
So fine, but ways to help indigenous banks. Those ways, if you are having an open-minded approach, those ways could also include a request from the Bank of Ghana to extend the deadline.
The deadline.
But the Bank of Ghana consistently says that as for this deadline, it's not moving. And you have collaboration from the finance minister, who is the president's appointee. So if you are exploring ways to help the indigenous banks, you should not close your mind that those ways will not include a request to extend the deadline for some banks. If once you make that indication, then I don't know which other way. Are you going to get some money from the consolidated fund to give them so they will meet the deadline? Certainly that cannot happen. So you should not close your mind to the possibility of requesting Bank of Ghana or making counter presentations to Bank of Ghana to convince them to perhaps amend their requirements. Yes, the Bank of Ghana is independent, but it is not intransigent. It's independent, but it's not intransigent. And so superior arguments can make them change their positions. So that is the good cop, bad cop attitude towards this industry players that I don't like.
Before I come to Dr. Buakon, Dr. Jinapo, this argument that some banks do not need the huge capital because they're interested in doing some small jobs, and so they don't need that. The second deputy governor is suggesting that that is indeed not the case, because every bank, that's according to Madam Elsie Awaji, she says that every bank, irrespective of what it does, require that so that they don't depend on liquidity from the Bank of Ghana. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I think the statement being made by the deputy governor was even reiterated by Dr. Mwakwa. I must concede that I don't have that much of expertise when it comes to that area, but at the end of the day, being a Ghanaian and living within our economy, you can conclude that our economy is one that is more subsistence, in the sense that you have ordinary people looking for small money. I mean, you talk about Maslow. How much does Maslow give the ordinary trader, the taxi driver? So if we are looking at just getting banks that are interested in big boys or big business going for millions of dollars, then I think the argument will be misplaced. I mean, you're talking of planting for food and jobs. They're subsistence farmers. Somebody needs just some small loan to go and buy 2 bags of fertilizer. You know, so we definitely need those kind of institutions, whether you want to refer to them as banks or whatever it is. We need those institutions. Today, microfinance is one of the biggest, because of the nature of our economy. But I think moving forward, and I haven't heard that much being said, I mean, the indigenous banks, you are talking of UBA, Zenith, these are banks that probably got to where they are because they were given some kind of support by their government. You're talking of banks from Malaysia because they were giving support. So if these banks come here and you say it should be a level playing field, when you and I know that our banks like Unibank, Capital Bank do not have the financial muscle to be able to compete with banks like EcoBank and Unibank and UBA, right, then if you are not careful in future, this economy is going to be dominated by the foreign banks. And you can think of capital flight, you know. So I think in all the discussions that we are having, it goes to tell you that the window of discussion or dialogue cannot be closed. And I don't think a position being taken by the Bank of Ghana that, look, it is either you take our terms or you get out is the right way forward. As I keep saying, the most important thing when it comes to the economy is not just about money sitting in bank, but people getting jobs and money being in people's pockets. And that is why in my initial submission, I said, look, in all what we are doing, we must be mindful of the ramification, the psychological uncertainties that is going on even today. Today we are discussing this, and it's going to be discussed on almost every platform. How is it affecting the confidence of the banking system? And that is where we need to be careful. But in any case, look, even though the Bank of Ghana is an independent, autonomous body, the buck stops with the president and the government. Anything that happens, government must. Oh yeah, he has to take responsibility for it.
Okay. Let me put that question to Dr. Buakon and see. So the president has to take a decision.
Yes, I mean, he's a leader of this country, and so there's nothing in this country that does not concern the president. I share, I mean, with my two senior brothers that the Bank of Ghana's approach, to some extent, can be softened to make sure that there is room for more dialogue and for proper position to be reached, but obviously not an extension for 4 years as the banks are seeking. I think that 4 years is too long a period to ask for extension to be able to raise the minimum capital level. Yes, Honorable Suhini talked about the fact that the president is trying to intervene, and he thinks that the Bank of Ghana is autonomous, and there's kind of double standardness here when the president says that I want you to do your work as autonomous as possible, but the finance minister comes and don't forget that the finance minister is a key player in the financial sector of this country. And also, government policies inform the Bank of Ghana's policies, especially the monetary policy setting. And so whatever happens at the real sector and the economy in general from government have, you know, consequential effects.
I don't think, maybe if I could just help you, I don't think you understood me.
No, I'm coming to your point. I'm coming to the point that you said.
Okay, you see,
I understood you well.
The point, if you just let me help, okay. The point I made is not about Bank of Ghana being autonomous and then finance minister interfering. The point I made is what I see to be double talk. Yes, the Bank of Ghana is autonomous, is independent.
Right.
But I am also saying that if that is the case, why do we get an impression from the finance minister sometimes that through the fact that he was the first to announce this, that they work together, he can intervene, he can influence what they say, and that's what he also said. Government financial decisions will definitely be in consultation with the Bank of Ghana. Then the president also acts like, I don't know what Bank of Ghana is doing. This is a committee I have set up to take a look at it. Is that not legitimate?
The finance minister, if you read the 2017 budget as was read in March, this minimum capitalization issue was mentioned in the budget. I mean, I was part of the team that prepared the budget. We talked about the minimum capital requirement for the banks. It is not out of place for a finance minister of a country to have that thinking, because the finance minister also has the financial services division that is in charge of these financial services, banks and all of that. This is not the first time that the Bank of Ghana has decided to raise the minimum capital requirement level, and the president has intervened. In fact, during President Kufuor's time, when such a decision was made, the banks petitioned President Kufuor, and President Kufuor at the time invited the bank. There is no way the president will say that I've received a petition and I will attend to the petition. These are Ghanaian banks, people of high repute who have been able to build a bank. They petitioned the president. President Kufuor invited the banks, the Bank of Ghana and the interested parties, and they sat down to Jojo. Similarly, in this case, President Akufo-Addo was petitioned by the banks. And the president, upon receiving the petition, decided to attend to the petition respectfully as mandated of him. And the president called for a meeting with the banks and set up a committee out of the discussion. It is not the president taking an ex-cathedral power to say that I'm setting up a committee. The discussions, deliberations at the meeting ended that there ought to be a committee, and that was in agreement with all parties, and the banks agreed that let's set up this committee. And this committee is not set up outside the banks which petitioned the president. They are part of the committee, and the committee is supposed to go through it to see ostensibly what government and the Bank of Ghana can do to make sure that the local banks are brought up to a level that they can be on their feet, not necessarily on this minimum capital issue. Okay. And so we need to understand that thing. On the issue of bank liquidity,
quickly, like if you can give me the
we need bigger banks. You see, we use the fact that we need banks to have higher capital to support big ticket transactions as the base, because we can't go and talk of the floor while the cap is there. You understand? So we said that you must have capital. You can be doing SME businesses, but it depends on the number which move to your bank to demand for money. If you are supporting smaller businesses and thousands of them come to your bank a day, and you are unable to give them one cedi, it means you don't have the capital. So you need to have a certain minimum capital, such that even if it is one person which is coming for huge sums of money, or hundreds of people which are coming for smaller money, you'll be able to satisfy that. I don't know, that is the essence of banks. Doc was talking about the need and the essence for velocity of money. Money ought to change hands so frequently. There should be some level of higher velocity in the system. If the velocity is low, it means that liquidity levels are down. And once liquidity levels are down, once I go to the bank, I don't get the money.
You don't get
and
the
therefore
money.
I'm unable to use it for
Right.
businesses, and therefore cannot also pass on to the ordinary people.
Okay.
So it makes sense for banks to have some level minimum capital, and this is not the first time that the Bank of Ghana is raising. But of course, the discussion that I see on this suggests that there ought to be some kind of further deliberations and thinking through this. Personally, I do not support the fact that the Bank of Ghana says that take it or break.
Okay.
I mean, they can give them some time.
I guess you've made that
through
point.
this. And
I'm grateful, Dr. Wako. Let's jump to the Finder this morning. Some figures on the front page of Finder. Mahama 39.5, Kufuor 33, Nanado 10, and Professor Mills 4%. The story is suggesting that data on the annual report to Parliament on presidential office staff positions to increase in numbers between 4 and 33% in the Fourth Republic. Now, 2017 report says 10% increase over 2016. That's how the Finder puts it. The data shows that 998, even though the Finder put the figure at 988 staff. The list submitted to Parliament by President Nana Akufo-Addo, covering the year 2017, represent a 10% increase over the list of 892 by ex-President John Mahama, but was not presented to Parliament because he lost the elections. That's what the Finder says. Now, 2016 report is 26% increase over 2014. 2014 report is 4.7% increase over 2013. 2013 report is 6.1% increase over 2010. And so the story is suggesting that from Professor Mills to President Kufuor to President Mahama to Nonado, the figures are there. President Mahama, ex-President Mahama, increased his staff by 39.5%. President Kufuor increased his by 33%. Professor Mills increased his by 4%. Nonado increased his by 10%. That's a story put out there by Elvis Darkon this morning, the Finder. Dr. Jinapo, this is a fallout from the presidential staff issue. Now, we're being told that these are the figures. Do we really need to be worried about how much the increases are, or we should focus our attention on what we're getting from the numbers, whether large or small?
Well, I think it's a very interesting story and an interesting twist to the debate that has engulfed this whole presidential staffers issue. I would have wished that this study that is being done, I don't know whether it's an empirical study or
they picked their report from Parliament.
Yeah, I mean, we needed to know the referencing of the sources, in the sense that one of the biggest issues that I think we have, and emanating from this whole brouhaha, is the lack of data. Lack of data. And I find it very, very worrying, especially when we are looking at the apex of governance in this country, the presidency. We don't even know how many staffers President Mahama left and how many President Nana has as it stands now. If you listen to which side of the aisle that the argument is coming from, the NDC says they had 600 and something. Today, the Finder is saying 892. In fact, the Finder story even pegs the figure for President Nana at 988.
Right.
When the figure that is being bundled around is 998. So there's a lot of inconsistency. A lot of inconsistency. And I find it extremely appalling that we don't even have official data of how many people work at the presidency, who is a public servant or a civil servant, and who was appointed by what? By the coming administration as maybe a political appointee. That is the first problem that I find. And if today, Bright, you come to my university and we have ghost names, why would you blame the system? Because that is the kind of system that we are running. That notwithstanding, I think, like it or hate it, there's an increment in terms of what? The staff. Today, as it stands, we are talking of somewhere around 900. Somewhere around 900. And that is definitely an increment over the previous administration. What I also find interesting is the debate has always revolved around the number of people and how much money is being spent. We are being told that President Mahama had about 800 and something staffers, and he spent about some 6 billion. Today, Nanado has about 900 and something, and he spent about 1.5 billion. Then I asked myself, the 1.5 billion vis-a-vis the 6 billion, is it salary for the workers? Salary for the workers. These are money being used for what? For projects. So we need to know how much these individuals are being paid, how much is being spent on them, what is the total budget in terms of what? Remuneration. And that needs to be juxtaposed with what? Productivity. Productivity. And I think it's about time as a country we sit down seriously and think through how many people always need to be appointed. Because, look, today we are talking of more or less resourcing and putting the private sector into a place of efficiency. So if this is what is being proposed, and ironically, it looks as if the public sector, it's more or less being overburdened with staff, then it becomes what? It becomes problematic. So I think this provides us an opportunity. I've heard people say there needs to be a legislation, right, more or less capping how many people can be appointed by the president. But I think the first thing that needs to be done is we need to have official data, proper auditing system of who works at the presidency or who works anywhere. I quite remember not too long ago under President Mahama's regime, we had something called biometric registration, where every worker was registered, was just for the purposes of payment. Are these people biometrically registered? I mean, do we have official letters of appointments? If there are official letters of appointment, how come we cannot get official data of this, the number of people who have been employed? So the issue of the percentage of increments, I don't think it's something that is worthy of any sort of analysis, because I mean, the data did not even go as far as Rawlings. We started from the Fourth Republic. We are talking of the Rawlings regime. It didn't get to that level. It's not about how many people are being appointed or what the total number of increments, but we're looking at productivity. How many people are appointed and what is the end result in terms of the appointments?
I'm grateful. Alhaji, the story is suggesting that Mr. Mahama increased his staff by 39.5%, and Nanado has only done 10%. Trying to suggest that the whole commentary on the thing is needless.
Well, it's very difficult to defend the indefensible. No matter how the NPP turns this, is still going to amount to a total cheat. I mean, it is not about whether we have verifiable data or not. It's about the penchant of some people to just do propaganda. And in the process of that propaganda, they throw out figures that obfuscate the true figures. Because we know that this is a constitutional requirement. And in today's media or research, finding information is not difficult. Even if you cannot have access to the official sources, just Google or use any search engine on the internet. And you will know the number of people that President Mahama presented to Parliament over the years. And you will know what the MPP said about those figures. It wasn't about those figures being less than 998. No. It was just about those figures being 600 or 700 or whatever they want to call it, and simply saying it was high and amounted to low productivity. So the latest introduction of, oh, we just increased by 5% doesn't even make sense to me. Because the argument was that whatever President Mahama presented was too high and amounted to waste of public purse. So even if you maintain President Mahama's figures, you would have still been a disappointment. You would have still been a disappointment even if you maintain President Mahama's figures, because you criticize those figures. So what is this fuss about trying to confuse the whole discussion by throwing out numbers there? The point is that, did you think 678 was too high and led to a rape of the public purse? Did you think that 700 staffers was too high? Did you think 800 was too high? Did it matter their level of productivity? Was that the argument then? Or the simple or mere fact that this was thrown out there made you so angry to the point that you thought this was an incompetent government? So why are you shifting the goalposts? Why are you trying to deceive people? What we do know is that 998 names have been presented so far. And the finder, in its attempt to even do the propaganda, reduces it to 988. That should tell you that it is a paper or an analysis that you cannot even place value on. The fascination to...
Could have been a typo.
Yeah, but there is that, it's not the only error in it. It talks about even the list also being prepared by President Mahama but not presented. Because you see, they know that if they indicate that it was presented to a particular source, say Parliament, you check in Parliament and they will be exposed. So the writer says it was prepared by President Mahama and he saw it in President Mahama's wardrobe. I mean, what is that fascination to heap everything wrong about this country on that poor man, John Mahama? Why? I mean, let's face the facts. I have heard also the the information minister threw out figures there that was also published by the Daily Guide. Complete falsehood. Complete falsehood, because we have data that in some cases they themselves as a government have submitted. You can find that in the 2017 budget that was presented by the finance minister. You can find that in a report that was presented to the Finance Committee on March 20th, 2017 by the Deputy Chief of Staff, Samuel Abujinapo. You can find that also on page 6.3, section 3.8 of the Finance Committee report 2017. They quoted the figures, the amount of money that was allocated and utilized by the Office of Government Machinery in 2015-2016. It is in their own documents, and none is above 719 million. None is above 719 million. All these documents have quoted, and they presented it to Parliament. Yet you have the finance minister and the mouthpiece of the MPP Daily Guide deceiving the people that even with the less number of staffers that President Mahama had, he spent about 3 billion. Complete falsehood. Complete, that is not supported by any verifiable data. And as a minority, we have challenged them to look into their own budgetary statement, the budget statement of 2017, and tell us what number they put there as being utilized, I mean the amount of money that was sent. And again, like I have indicated, and the Chief of Staff, the Deputy Chief of Staff is not dead, he's alive. We have given the date, 20th March 2017, when he appeared. How much did he say was allocated and utilized by the Office of Government Machinery? So this attempt to share the shame, because it is embarrassing, and the people of Ghana who had a lot of hope in the NPP are shocked by these numbers. And so with that embarrassment, there is an attempt to share the embarrassment. But please, it is your monkey. Carry it. It is your monkey, and it is not done in isolation. We already know that you have unprecedentedly increased our number of ministers. You have done that. The biggest ever in the history of this country, 110. Again, you have set a record of forming 3 development authorities and appointing 17 CEOs. 17 CEOs to 3 different authorities. Just 3, 17 CEOs. So when
they include
oh yes, there is
deputies. Okay.
Well, but they are CEOs.
Okay, all right.
Whether they are CEOs or they are deputy CEOs, they are CEOs.
All right.
We have 110 ministers. Whether they are ministers or deputies, they are ministers of state. So there are 17 CEOs to 3 authorities. Apart from even the amorphous creations that have been done at various established institutions like SNITs, like SIC, like National Health Insurance, all kinds of managers and directors created. So indeed, the job creation is happening.
We should not think about the disadvantage job is that doing. The claim is that there's a lot of work to be done.
The question, Bright, is the job they are doing today, were those jobs not done better in the past? In the past, we had just 2 transport ministers. Yet we had railways being constructed. We had airports being revamped and constructed. Today you have about 5 transport ministers. Tell me, in fact, STC was revamped. Metro Mass had new buses. 1 year, 15 months. You have 5
you mean 5
ministers in the transport sector. You have the transport ministry, you now have the aviation. Tell me, what is there to boast? What can they boast of? But with the 2 transport ministers, I can tell you about the Tamale Airport. I can tell you about the Terminal 3 that is coming up. I can tell you about the expansion in the Kumasi Airport. I can tell you about the new buses that STC got. I can tell you about the Metro Mass. So when you tell us numbers should not matter, but we should look at productivity, even in that argument, you fall flat.
Okay. Dr. Boakun, so it's interesting. Should we be thinking about the number of people each president added, or perhaps we should look at what is being talked about, what they are going to do, what they are doing, the productivity level?
Yeah, right, I'm worried. And I'm worried in the sense that as a young guy, Ghana is growing to a point where almost every talk is simply characterized by cheap politicking. And if we don't graduate from that level, I'm afraid we may not be able to get to where we want to get to as a country.
How do you mean?
If we would sit down and allow everything to be politicized out of propaganda, hypocrisy, lack of knowledge, Ghana will face doom. Because this whole thing, like Honorable Suhini used to talk about, NDC, MPP, President Mills, President Mahama, there hasn't been any government since 1992 that has not appointed people to add on to the existing public and civil servants who work at the presidency. And today, like Dr. Dajinapo alluded to, there has been an interesting twist to this whole brouhaha in this newspaper, where analysis have been done and percentages computed to indicate by how much certain presidents increase the staffers at the presidency. And it's obviously clear that the person who has passed in these exams, per these statistics, and doing well, is Professor Mills. Then followed by Nana Akufo-Addo. In fact, the worst of all is President Mahama.
I told you. No, there's that fascination to keep everything wrong in this country on that portal.
I like data a lot, and I believe in statistics. You see? So per this analysis, it tells you blatantly that the person who did worse in terms of increasing the number, if increasing the number is a monstrous act, then President Mahama did worse because he increased what he made by 39.5%, roughly 40%. Please, you see, we shouldn't go towards that line. Since this whole thing started,
because you said what President Mahama had. Is this too many?
You see, that is why I'm saying that.
Questioning how many you have.
That is why I'm saying that the depoliticization will be the most thing for us to focus on.
How do we depoliticize?
Because if Honorable Suyene says here today, tomorrow MPP goes to opposition and they do the same thing to them, I don't think that is proper. Even when the whole thing started, we were made to believe that the 900 and something people, all of them, okay, are habiting or they are inside the Flaster House. And they go to work.
Who did that?
Oh, I mean, that's the commentary you guys were running.
No.
That
no.
Flaster House is hosting.
Because you did that to President Mahama.
Jubilee House is hosting 900 people.
You did that to President Mahama. So you just know who did that.
At the office of the presidency, so many things go to. You go to the State House, around the State House area. you know, the Blue House, and those. There are people there who work under the office of the president. There are ministries which have people working there who work under the office of the president. And there are people who are originally inside that house. When I was talking about directors, and I'm coming.
Your point is that the numbers.
We should focus on productivity. That is the most important thing. At the end of the day,
you have no
at the end of the day, what is the contribution of these people towards the development of this country?
What is it now?
Are they performing
18 months in office. What can you say is the productivity?
Exactly. That is the point. And that is why the argument must focus. That is why I want to challenge you, the media, to interrogate that the 876 people that President Mahama had that they thought was okay.
That is not on record anywhere.
And they were not wasting the public. This is record.
Where is it?
Records of Parliament. I can show you. It is here. This is in the records of Parliament. I mean, you don't have to dispute this. You are a member of Parliament. You know this. Okay?
I don't know it.
You know this.
It's only in your head.
Even with that number that you consider to be small, you cancel teacher trainee allowances. With 900 plus that you consider to be big, we have paid the teacher trainee allowances. With your smaller number relatively, you cancel nursing trainee allowances. The government that has employed the number that you say is large has paid nursing trainee allowances. With your number that you consider to be relatively small, the CD was depreciated. Today, we have a stable currency. Tell me the CD is not stable now. You plunge us into doom so with your smaller number. We have solved the problem of doom so. You know, with the number that relatively consider to be smaller.
Taking that false.
You shrank the size of this economy. You reduce the size of this economy, GDP of this economy to 3.7% within 1 year. With 900 and something number that you consider to be big, our economy has grown from 3.7 to 8.5, more than doubling what you met. So productivity should be the essence and the focus for discussion.
And not
on
the
this.
number.
It is not the number.
Let me give you the last. I think then they will wrap up.
I like Dog's recitation, but there's a quick one. You see, on teacher training allowance, all I want to say is that the NPP works to win the next election. The NDC works to build a nation.
So you cancel the allowances to build a nation?
Let's give the last word on this and then we'll move on.
Well, I think it's interesting and definitely it will always take the political dimension. But I think at the end of the day, the good people of this country are the people who are going to judge whether 998 is bringing about productivity or not. As Rollins always say, it should reflect in your pocket.
I'm grateful. He's a lecturer at the University of Education, Widiba, Dr. Ahmed Jinapor, the Member of Parliament for the Tamale North constituency, a member of the NDC, Honorable Alhaji Suhini, was also here. The spokesperson of the Vice President, Dr. Gideon Buakon, was my third guest. Gentlemen, grateful for a Wednesday morning with me. And those of you who send your comments, we're also grateful you did. We're reading them as soon as we see how Liverpool did not walk alone after beating Roma 5-3. Stay with us. Sports is coming up next.